Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David, how are you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. All things considered, all things considered.
There's a lot of things to consider, aren't there?
Yeah, let's not get into them either. Let's just stick to our knitting here. Oilers hockey. Uh, we could be talking for hours about all the various issues of the world. So, Bruce, we are in the great position of being able to watch Oilers hockey, or not Oilers hockey highlights, but Oilers players in Europe, and we're watching now the games of the various prospects. You watch some Wild Bill Lagesson highlights, the recent signing of the Oilers, and we're gonna start at the blog right now. We're gonna do player grades, and you think, how can you guys do player grades? Well, our plan is to watch 3, 4, 5 players a night or something like that, who's ever playing that night in Europe, watch their shifts, watch their games, their shifts. We watch their shifts of those players and give them a player grade based on our 1 to 10 Cult of Hockey formula, which viewers and readers are very familiar with by now, and report back to you guys on what we're seeing from the various prospects. And the kind of the exciting news for the Oilers, from an Oilers perspective, is there's lots of prospects over there. There's a ton of Oilers players, and these guys, there's lots of really, really good players. There's guys who are going to be with the Oilers next year, like Gaetan Haas, Jesse Puljujarvi, maybe Evan Bouchard, maybe Ryan McLeod. There's I just watched Markus Niemelainen. There's Theodor Lennström. Who am I missing?
About 11 more guys, David. There's 17 Oilers prospects that are players over there. I mean, from Adam Cracknell at the one edge of the spectrum to a number of recent draft choices, which are obviously more in the center of our attention, like Philip Broberg, Evan Bouchard, Raphael Lavoie, Ryan McLeod, who you named already, who are all like top 40 draft picks in recent years. So there's plenty of guys to follow, and a few guys from the actual team, with European roots that went home to play, like Haas, like Patrick Russell, like Joachim Nygaard, and like the recently signed and already reassigned Dominic Cahoon, who's going to be playing in the German league with Red Bull München.
The little Kahuna. So there's here I'll just go. Here's just the draft picks. There's Apeli Rasanen. I've never seen Apeli Rasanen play a game, so we're going to be able to watch his games. There's Patrick Sikkonen. There's Matej Blumel. Thomas Mazura, I think, is playing. No, Missouri isn't playing. There's Maxim Denizhikin. There's Maxim Berezhkin. So there's lots of like lesser, bottom end prospects that we're going to watch as well now and then. So there's going to be lots to watch, and it's going to be very interesting because we'll see all this European hockey, all these different leagues, there's Maximov, all these different players. So I'm looking forward to it. And not just the big ticket guys, but some of the smaller guys that we've never actually done any with our own eyes, see them play and describing their games.
Right. Well, there's the 17 that I mentioned earlier. Those are guys under contract, and then the bunch of guys that you just named, and there's more of them beside that aren't signed yet by the Oilers, but who have been drafted by the Oilers and who are on their reserve list. And I'm not sure how many more, but probably 8 to 10 more players than that. I mean, the Russian netminder Ilya Konovalov is another player of great interest over there who might be in the nearer term than we know in terms of plans for the Oilers. He could be in the picture as early as next season, as in 21-22. But there's certainly lots of players to catch up on, and I think our first probably priority is the guys that are under contract that are maybe closer to being contributors at the NHL level.
Definitely.
But we also have all those other guys that we can drop in on and check them out.
And when the university college season gets going in the States, we'll have reports on Dylan Holloway and Carter Savoy. And when the OHL season gets going, on Tyler Tullio. Tyler Tullio, the guy I can never remember his name. Tyler Tullio. Not much in terms of major junior hockey. Not much else going on.
Oh, yeah. The Oilers have really gone away from drafting out a major junior. It's been years since I had a WHL player, surprisingly.
You're right, since Stuart Skinner in 2017.
Kyler Yamamoto, yeah.
Last WHLer, and Kyler Yamamoto that same year. Okay, so today we'll talk about, I'd watch games for McLeod, Haas, Puljujarvi, and Niemelainen. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, let's start with, there's some betting odds if there's a Canadian division out. Oh, yeah. So who do the Vegas betting odds, whoever, or the online betting odds, probably more accurately, what's the ranking of the Canadian teams according to
OddsShark? OddsShark, it is that's doing it.
And I think they set the odds. I think the idea of setting odds is, well, it's to make money for the gambling house, right? But they want to set it. I'm not exactly sure how they do it. Do you know how they set the odds? Like, it's not like who they think is the best team. That's not.
No, it's where they think the bets are going to go. They're
win the bet, right? Or do they just need the bet to win? They just need people to bet to win because they get their.
They want to set it at a place where people could go either way on it, and the house wins that little bit in the middle that they call the vigorish. And I know very little about it, David, because I'm not a betting man. The only times I've ever darkened the door of a casino is as a volunteer on the house side of the business, and the house always wins. So
counting all that money. Are you the count room manager, Bruce? Is that your job?
Yeah, I've done that, and I've been the banker, and I've been the assistant GM, and all of the different things. Because of my ancient history as a banker, they think I can count and do things like that. So what I can count is that the odds are generally against the better, which is why I don't bet, even though I know it can be fun. Anyway, they've set Toronto Maple Leafs as the betting odds-on favorite to lead a putative Canadian division.
And what's the second team?
Second team is the Edmonton Oilers. And yeah, according to this article that just showed up on Sportsnet, they say the Edmonton Oilers enjoyed the highest finish in the NHL standings last season among Canadian teams, winning 37 games, racking up 83 points, and are listed as plus 250 favorites to claim top spot in an all-Canadian division. And then they go on to say the Oilers have not rested on their laurels during this offseason. In addition to signing defenseman Tyson Barrie and veteran forward Kyle Turris as free agents, Edmonton has also welcomed back promising Finnish forward Jesse Puljujarvi, who rejoins the club after spending last season in Europe. However, the team has faced criticism for failing to upgrade its goalkeeping, sticking with the tandem of Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith.
So. Yeah, there's this idea. You know what? The most underrated player in the NHL right now might be Mikko Koskinen. That's all I'm saying. That's my hot take for the day, Bruce. I mean, his goalie save percentage was literally almost exactly the same as Jacob Markstrom. Mm-hmm. Just one, is that 1/100th off? Yeah, 1/100th off. Is it 1/1000th?
1/1000th.
1/1000th off, and if it was 1/1, so and he is, we have a problem in Edmonton, but in Calgary they've solved it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense to you, Bruce, or is it just me that thinks that sounds a little bit odd?
If they've gone out and spent a big pile of money on a true number one, like Jacob Markstrom, what winds up happening then is they have Mikko Koskinen spending more time on the bench and delivering less value on his contract. I guess the dice roll is that Koskinen can step it up, play more games at a high caliber or reasonably high caliber, which he played last year, at least in the regular season, and sort of put a Band-Aid on the number two position with the guy that they know in Mike Smith at a lower salary, way less bonuses, and with the number three man in reserve in Anton Forsberg in the system, who at least is an NHL experienced goalie that they can call on to come up and clean up a mess. So that's I think this year there's more of a plan B than there was before, and I'm certainly glad of that. Now, whether it's the right plan B is another question, but I think Koskinen, what you don't want him doing is playing 95% of the games the way he did down the stretch in his rookie season after they
Yeah,
traded out
yeah.
Cam Talbot. And Koskinen, he was great for about 12 games, and then the grind got to him, and his game went steadily downhill for the next 12. And so you want a backup who can play, one game a week is kind of what you minimum that you want out of your backup goalie. And the Oilers are relatively confident in Mike Smith. I mean, the way I look at it at this, David, in retrospect, the $5 million a year that the Oilers supposedly offered for Jacob Markstrom, and let's forget about the 7-year deal and just focus on next year. $5 million
Yeah.
they would have paid that guy next year. Well, they added 4 top 9 forwards, at least in theory, on paper, on electrons or however we write stuff down these days. In Kyle Turris, Tyler Ennis, Jesse Puljujarvi, and Dominic Cahoon, the 4 of them combined have a cap hit of $4.8 million. Where would you rather be spending your $5 million? Is my question.
It's when you start to get 4 players for one, and they can all fit under your cap, and they're all possibly really good players. It starts to add up. So the Toronto Maple Leafs, Bruce, they added to their team. I'm just looking at cap friendly here. Wayne Simmons, Jimmy Vesey, Joe Thornton, Travis Boyd, who was a very good pickup. He's their Tyler Ennis kind of, or their Cahoon kind of pickup. He had a really good points per game. They added TJ Brody and a Finnish 26-year-old defenseman, Mikko Lehtinen. What do you think of those pickups compared to what the Oilers picked up, Bruce?
Well, you hear lots of buzz about these guys, but I mean, they're in the Leaf system, so you're going to hear lots of buzz about them.
Yeah.
I mean, this Lehtinen is a real under the radar kind of signing of a guy who could, emerge sooner than later. I'm with you on Travis Boyd being another under the radar pickup.
That was a nice one. Yeah.
Joe Thornton. I mean, they've already got Jason Spezza. I'm not quite sure how they fit both these guys. They're going to sort of platoon them and use one game and one the next. I mean, there's different ways to do it. And the good news from Toronto perspective is they're not paying them a big bunch of money. Unlike some aging superstars that, still get $3 and $2 million in the later stages. So it's a nice idea. I'm not sure how much of an effect those guys will have.
They got Simmons because I guess Milan Lucic wasn't available. So,
well, Simmons. I mean, everybody loves Wayne Simmons, and I don't know how many trade proposals I read on the Oilogosphere over the years that had the Oilers doing something to somehow get Wayne Simmons, but everybody's remembering the Wayne Simmons of about 3 to 5 years ago when he was with the Kings, early on with the Flyers, and he's one of these power forwards who, unfortunately, as he's entered into his early 30s, his skills have eroded, and his speed was never a plus for him, but I think he can be considered a plodding skater right now. Absolutely zero questions about the guy's character or anything like that, and I'm sure he'll help in certain situations, but I'm not sure he's going to solve long-term or even many short-term problems.
This is the thing about the people in hankering after these players. Like, they often are hankering after the guy who used to be. Wayne Simmons was a hell of a hockey player. Like he in his prime, he was a really, really good power forward, second line type in the NHL. But now, no, come on. Like, maybe he helped the team, and they're not counting on him to be anything more than a 4th line player. So, for him to be their Alex Chason or their James Neal, and he's a heck of a lot cheaper than James Neal, so I'll give them that. Winnipeg added Paul Stastny. I'm looking down. People will see me looking down here. It's because I have a second computer, right, and it's down here. So they added Paul Stastny, Nate Thompson. It looks like they added Derek Forberg, Lucas Sabiza, Nathan Wailu. I think he played with the Habs. So a smaller name additions to that team.
Patching up the defense a little bit.
Yeah, Yeah, maybe, Winnipeg's a good team. They've got a lot of good young players. So, although I was reading, I think it was Dom Luszczyszyn of The Athletic, someone had Josh Morrissey's contract as one of the worst 10 contracts in the NHL. And I thought, really? There's lots of really bad contracts in the NHL. And at least Josh Morrissey, like, okay, maybe you're paying him as a top pairing defenseman. And maybe you don't think he's that, but he's a top 4D man. Yeah, I don't see him having anywhere close to one of the worst contracts in the NHL. In fact, I like the player a lot, and maybe they're underrating him is what I would. Maybe the system that they're using of the statistical system that they're using.
They hate 8-year contracts, and in
Fair
his
enough.
case, the contract hasn't even kicked in yet. He signed it last summer, as soon as his negotiating window and
Yeah, one of
opened.
those.
He was parallel to Nurse, right? They both signed basically the same extent 2-year bridge at the same time. And as soon as Morrissey finished the first year of that bridge, they signed him to 8 years, I think $6.25 million, so $50 million commitment to the player.
But he's
That
only
hasn't even
25.
started yet. Yeah, oh, he's young.
He's
Yeah,
only
he's
25,
a
so
contemporary of Leon Draisaitl. They played on the
yeah,
same teams together in Prince Albert and Kelowna, and they
not
were
like Mark
deadly,
Edwards.
deadly together. They were fun to watch.
It's not like the Mark Edwards Vlasic contract, which Dom had as one of the worst contracts, and which is
Great player, but too old to be given that much term. That's a bad contract to me. Is a big term at bigger dollars to an older player. Like that's just the unholy trinity.
Calgary added Markstrom, of course, Josh Levo, Dominic Simon, Chris Tanev, who's still a good hockey player, but maybe a couple years from now they're really going to regret that. So they improved themselves in Vancouver. Of course, they lost Markstrom, but they have a good goalie, and they picked up Nate Schmidt from Vegas, who's a hell of a defenseman. If you ask me, I really like Nate Schmidt. So I actually like Edmonton's chances. I'm not saying that the betting people got it wrong with Edmonton and Toronto. Of course, I'd have Edmonton on top because I'm an Edmonton
They were on
homer.
top last year.
Yeah,
And
they were on top last year, and they look to me like they've improved the most. Like honest, like when I look at what they've added to the team, when you put Cahoon in there and Tyson Barrie, I'll take. I like who the Oilers
Well,
added.
you also have to look at the subtractions, right? And in Edmonton's case, we're looking at losing out on Oscar Klefbom, which is, it potentially really changes the look of the defense. So oftentimes, that they talk about the additions, but it's a two-way street.
Yeah,
Calgary got a couple of pretty decent under the radar players in Levo and Simon that I think could help
they
their
did.
depth.
They did.
And they got Tanev and Markstrom from Vancouver, and the Canucks replaced them with Braden Holtby, of course, and Nate Schmidt. And Nate Schmidt is a big ad for the defense. They gave up a third-round pick for a top pairing defenseman. I mean, that's going to help your team, and not at that ridiculous of a contract. And I think basically Vancouver paid the same for Holtby and Schmidt as Calgary will pay for Markstrom and Tanev, and we'll see who comes out ahead in that equation.
They got so lucky with when Schmidt fell into their lap, essentially. Like they were heading to a little bit of a disaster, at least in the short term, for next season. But then suddenly in pops Nate Schmidt, and he's a hell of a player. Of course, Calgary lost TJ Brody. Right. As for Klefbom, and I've said this before, I'm less, because I'm so bullish on Caleb Jones. I think Caleb Jones, a healthy Caleb Jones, will be as strong as an injured Oscar Klefbom was last year. And I know not everyone's going to agree with that, but that's how I see it. Bruce, let's move on and let's talk about some of these players that we've been watching. And
you don't want to talk about the Habs, and all their big additions?
Oh, sorry, I missed the Habs. Yeah, let's
started in Toronto and went west, and of course Ottawa. But
let's do that. I overlooked the Habs for some reason. I got in a lot of trouble with Habs fans because
I bet you did.
I wasn't so keen on all. I wasn't so keen on all their signings, right? Because I've lived through in Edmonton. We've lived through that when you throw all that money at a mid-level player. we have lived through that. We have been there, Montreal Habs fans, and I get the excitement because I was excited when they signed Mark frickin' Fane too, and Benoit Pouliot. I was reading all the hype, and I hadn't watched these guys play. I didn't know. So, and I haven't watched Josh Anderson play. I have watched Tyler Toffoli play. He's a really good hockey player, but um, I'd rather have Dominic Cahoon on 1 year
Yeah.
than the Tyler. Dominic Cahoon has outscored Tyler Toffoli the last 2 years. He's outscored Josh Anderson, that's for sure. Now Josh Anderson's a much different player. Like he adds that power, the power element. So they brought in Josh Anderson, Tyler Toffoli. They re-signed Brendan Gallagher to a major deal. They re-signed Jeff Petrie, a 32-year-old Jeff Petrie, to a major deal. They have a young player, Alexander Romanov, who they're extremely excited about, who's apparently a very good prospect coming in. They brought in another goalie, Jake Allen, who's got.
That was big.
And then they gave him a new deal as well. He's got 1 year at $4.3 million left. So Bruce, they were very aggressive in terms of spending their money. What's that? My parents always used to say, you got money. Is that money burning a hole in your pocket? They used to tell me. And that's how Mark Bergevin, they had the salary cap dollars burning a hole in his pocket, and he spent that money.
Well, we talked about this in a few podcasts ago. Their top 6 forwards on their payroll are all wingers. And as we recall in Edmonton from the Hope era, building your team around wingers is a rather unconventional way to do it. The other unconventional thing is the big money they sunk into the goaltending now. I mean, they're already paying Carey Price $10.5 million, and to add a second pricey netminder, they got $14 million tied up in the goaltending position. And I can see the reasoning for the gamble. I think 60 games of Carey Price might be better than 70 games of Carey Price, and be able to spell the guy off a bit with a competent backup goalie, which Jake Allen at least can be. But that's a lot of tied up money, and I think one thing they've done with these long-term contracts, the guys like Anderson, Gallagher, and so on, is that when their rookie contracts start coming up on guys like Kotkaniemi and Suzuki, that were excellent young players for them, but they're going to have to find cap room for those guys in due course, and they're going to find themselves a little bit strapped to be able to make the kind of moves they might want to make. So
they're really high on Kotkaniemi and Suzuki, and this is why they're optimistic in Montreal as much as anything, because I think I didn't watch them in the playoffs, so I can't comment. But they apparently played really well, and maybe
Suzuki,
they did play
really good.
Maybe they did play really well. So that could, maybe these two players are ready to pop. Maybe they already have, but last year they were still they were marginal even strength scorers. Now they are really young, so. If you're a Montreal fan and you have two centers, like these are two centers, right? And if these guys can both play and they actually are the first and the second line center on the team, then I'll change my opinion about Montreal if those guys can prove that. But they lost.
But they're still going to have to, if they turn out to be those guys, they're still going to have to pay them. And I'll refer you to an ongoing situation on New York Islanders with Matthew Barzal. Who's just come to the end of his entry-level contract, and they haven't got any cap room to pay the guy. And there's rumblings of a potential offer sheet. There's rumblings of the Islanders having to buy out Jordan Eberle so that they have cap space for Barzal. I mean, those are not exactly ideal situations. But when you blow the cap, blow the budget on veterans, then what do you do when your young guys come to the next level? It's you need a little bit of long-term planning, and that's where, to me, Mark Bergevin has dropped the ball. Coughed up the puck.
Coughed up the puck. Yeah. Not everyone liked my suggestion that Dominic Cahoon is a superior version right now of Jordan Eberle, but I will stand by that, Bruce. I will stand by that, and I will my prediction is that Dominic Cahoon will at least have a higher points per 60 at even strength than Jordan Eberle next year. Eberle may get more power play time, so may get more points.
Yeah, that's
but Cahoon will outscore him on a rate basis at even strength. I'm not a betting person either, but I would bet on that. It's happened 2 years in a row, and Cahoon's younger. So now the one thing with Cahoon, he did get a concussion last year, and he also hurt his leg when he got to Buffalo. So he is coming off actually 2 injuries right in a row, and I don't. So that's always a little bit concerning. But players are, that's the life of the hockey player, and they seem to battle back. So okay. Are we ready? We dealt
Yep.
with we haven't talked about Ottawa, but we don't need to.
I'll say this about Ottawa. Down the road, they're setting up to be dangerous if they can never get the budget together to actually pay these guys into the heart of their careers. But they got a ton of young guys and a ton of draft choices and guys just coming around. And in theory, they're at the very early stages of what could be an excellent team if they manage it right. They got a ton of assets. Let's put it that way.
Running a lot of veterans too. Dadanov, Austin Watson, Alex Galchenyuk. I think they had already acquired Artem Anisimov earlier. And who did they bring in on defense? I don't know why they traded for Zaitsev. That was the biggest gift to Toronto.
Oh.
Good for Kyle Dubas gets a lot of heat from like the eyeball hockey crowd. He's made a lot of good deals. I don't think he's gotten it all right. I don't know if I like the Patrick Marleau thing that he did last year. Maybe he had no choice, giving up a first-round pick there to get rid of Marleau's contract. But Dubas has done a lot of smart deals, and although the Kadri one for Tyson Barrie didn't work out, but again, maybe they had to move Kadri. I don't know. Anyway, Ottawa will be. They brought in some tough guys too. Goodbranson and Josh Brown, who's apparently a really hard-nosed, tough defenseman. And I remember him playing in the Memorial Cup for Oshawa, I believe it was, and he was quite a good player then.
But they lost their tough guy Borowiecki. I never know how to pronounce that.
Oh, is he a tough guy?
Mark Borowiecki. Well, he's
scrappy.
He's a greasy, scrappy guy that will take on all comers. Like, I actually have a fair bit of respect for that guy, but he's kind of been sort of a part of the face of the Ottawa Senators, such as it's been not that recognizable over the years, but he's been one constant on that team. So.
You know who else Calgary has coming in is Juuso Välimäki, and he's a really good hockey player from what I've seen of him. He was injured last year, but he's a really good defenseman, and I think he's probably a top 4, maybe even higher than that defenseman. So that's going to help the Calgary Flames. All right, let's talk about we'll deal with the Swiss forwards first, then we'll go to Lagesson and Puljujarvi, and we'll end up with Puljujarvi and Niemelainen. So I watched one game each for our player grade series of Haas and Ryan McLeod. And Gaetan Haas he's not off to much of a scoring start. I think he's got 1 point in 6 or 7 games in the Swiss League. But he is playing. They're using him a lot. He's playing the power play. He's playing the penalty kill. One of the fun things about watching these players in Europe is guys that don't normally play the power play in North for the Oilers play the power play in Sweden, and you get to see how they do. And Haas's problem on the power play, he's a very good passer of the puck, but he doesn't have a shot. Gaetan Haas's shot is pretty much for a forward trying to make the NHL. That's a real negative for Gaetan Haas. He's really smart at tipping the puck in front of the net. In terms of shooting it, that is really not there. So on the power play, that kind of affects his performance. At even strength, Bruce, he's one of these players who I really like. And the reason I like him is I just find him to be so smart defensively. He just really reads the play well on defense. He's always on the right side of his man, covering the defensive slot. Yes. More dependable at that, easily, I thought, than any other Oilers center last year, including Riley Sheahan, who was supposed to be known for that. But I think Haas is a superior defensive center in many ways to Riley Sheahan at even strength because he's quicker. He's better getting the puck and going with the puck and making that first pass. When he gets the puck in his own zone, Gaetan Haas is very clever with the puck and he's quite strong in controlling it. And I saw that again in this game. There was no fans in the stands of the 3 games that I watched, or 4 games that I watched. It was the only one without any fans in the stands. Mm-hmm. The other ones had. Both in Finland and in another Austrian city, or Swiss city, excuse me, there was fans. And there seemed to be like every 3rd seat, would be my guess, every 4th seat in most of these games. So yeah, Haas. He's gonna. The Oilers are already. Well, Bob Stauffer of Oilers now is already talking about maybe bringing in another fourth line checking center, but it looks like Haas will get a chance. We know Ken Holland's famous for signing players and giving them a chance to do their job. Gaetan Haas is going to get that opportunity, and I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to be a strong defensive center. He's winning a lot of faceoffs. I don't know if he always has in Austria, but he's winning 55% of his faceoffs in the Swiss League right now. He's not scoring, but he will score because he's a good setup man and he's smart in front of the net. So the points are going to start to come, and he looks like he's in early mid-season form. He's good to go when he gets to the Oilers.
I'm keen to know what your impressions of him as a penalty killer.
I don't think in that game, I can't recall him being used on the PK, Bruce. Now, I might be incorrect about that, but I don't think he was on the power play, but I don't know if he was on the PK. The one time a couple times we saw him in Edmonton, he was good, but I hope he would be used there. Maybe he will be in a future game. Also in the Swiss League, I saw Ryan McLeod play, and that's about maybe it's just on the European ice, the wide open spaces of the the European ice. It suits him. He was flying out there. He scored 2 goals in the game I saw, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Oilers would put up highlights of those goals. Like on one, he kind of chipped the puck into the center ice area. The defenseman gets it and he strips the D man, goes in, and then the other one he comes down the wing and he scores. And those weren't the only good plays that he made, though. He was absolutely flying out there. And his combination of size and speed. And I remember at rookie camp when we first saw him live, how impressed we were in the 3-on-3 game, just what a rocket ship that guy is. Mm-hmm. This big, fast player. At the same time, Bruce, as compared to Gaetan Haas, who's actually a competition for the fourth line job, his defense is hit or miss. Yeah. His positional defense is hit or miss. He's often cheating, what I would call. Now, maybe that's what they want him to do is go for the breakaway, but he's lining up at center, but he's not actually covering the defensive slot exceedingly well. And if they want him to do that, well, it seemed to me he was kind of up ice looking for the pass a bit. He gives away. He's not as good or careful with the puck as a player like Haas. Haas rarely, it's like Mike Pekka at the end of his career, where Mike Pekka would be going down the wing and he would only take a certain kind of shot. I think it was like he would only go maybe short side, but not far side, because if he went far side, he might miss and the puck would go down the ice and the other team would have a break. Like Haas is thinking the game at that level where every play he's making, there's a two-way implication that he has in mind. Whereas McLeod's just flying out there. He really is flying, and it's great to see. But there still are, like, as I could see him, Bruce, suddenly I could see him as a winger in the NHL. A winger, he reminded me a lot of Tyler Pitlick all of a sudden. Maybe not quite as physical as Pitlick, but with a bit more speed. Pitlick, a similar amount of skill, but more speed than Tyler Pitlick. I mean, I think that's a fair comment. A winger in that mold, kind of third, fourth line winger, Ryan McLeod, at this point. But an NHL player. He's definitely got some NHL skills. As a
big
center,
boy too, eh?
Yeah, he's what, 6'1", 210 or something, 6'1", 205, something like that, 6'2". I don't know. I'll have to see more. So I'll monitor that. But man, he sure looked like he could play the wing in the NHL tomorrow. And I think they want to keep grooming him as a center. I think that's a good idea. It's going to take him some time to really dig in defensively. If you're going to be a center on a third, you've got to figure that out. You've got to figure out defensive slot play, like Sheahan does to some extent, and like I think Gaetan Haas is really good at. And if he can just get a little bit more firm and conservative, and making sure he's always on the right side of the puck in his own zone, in the defensive zone, the Oilers have a player there. That's the best I've seen him. Like I watched him in the HL last year, off and on, and I was kind of, come see, come saw. Like he was okay, but he didn't. You could see that flash of skill, but in the Swiss League, well, he could have a career in the Swiss League right now.
Well, that's where some of these guys are going to wind up, right? It's an equivalent to the Swiss League.
Yes.
But I saw not that game, but I certainly saw those two goals, which were his first two in that league. After 5 games, I think he had no goals and 2 assists, and I was starting to think, well, you got to better get a little bit offense going, and he got those 2 goals. And they're similar in a way. One where you say he kind of stripped the puck off the defenseman and burst past him. The other one, he just strictly burst past. So both times he was in alone on the goalie, and he beat the same goalie with the same shot twice, slow stick side, fooled
Good
him.
place to shoot.
And the short side on the angle he was coming in on, and buried both of them. So he certainly looked good on those plays. But I mean, his speed is sort of his most prominent trait. And you didn't see any signs of him coasting or standing around watching. He was moving his legs all the time.
I saw him he was moving the whole time.
Good.
There's this notion that he's a perimeter player. I mean, the European game's a little bit different, right? It's just these wide open spaces where people are flying all around. It's like an airport terminal or something like that. Like, it's just things going this way, that way, and it's not like the NHL game, so it's kind of hard to tell. I did notice a little bit, like I said, a little bit of carelessness, what I would call lack of efficiency or carelessness with the puck now and then, coupled with some absolutely fantastic passes and some absolutely fantastic rushes. So the high end stuff there that will get you to the NHL, Ryan McLeod has that. He can be an NHL player if he bears down defensively and gets really tough defensively. I think he's an NHL player, and so that's just up to him. He's to figure that out and to work out when to leave, when to go for the pass and when to hang back. And so I think Haas will be the answer next year, but McLeod might be the answer the year after that, after a season in the Swiss League, or if he ends up in the AHL this year. Bruce, you
certainly got an NHL skill set, eh, McLeod?
Oh yeah, he really does, and it's good because we both kind of had seen him somewhat good moments. I like what you've said about both Lavoie, who you wrote about recently, and Lagesson. I can't remember exactly how you summed it up, but I think you said something like I generally saw him pretty good or something like that. For both players. So it was kind of a good review, but you can see the holes in their game still, or whatever they are. What is it with Lagesson, Bruce? What did you see with him? Because let's move on to him.
Yeah, sure. Well, at that level, like he's really been a journeyman. I mean, the Oilers drafted him in 2014, so he's entering his draft +7 season now. He's been in our prospect series 7 years in a row now. And bumping around, and just outside the top 10 typically. And he's gone down, a couple of notches, like the Swedish second division, Allsvenskan, Hockey Allsvenskan, is a lower league than the AHL. Like it's to the SHL what the AHL is to the NHL. So the Allsvenskan is a bit lower. And you would expect a guy like Wild Bill, 24 years old, lots of pro experience, played in the NHL last year. There weren't too many NHL players in the game that I saw, or games that I saw. And he stepped in basically as their number one defenseman. He's getting a ton of ice time. He's, I think, third in the league in ice time, 22 minutes 40 per game, and over 20 minutes every game. The one thing it didn't surprise me once I saw it, but I didn't really think about it in advance, was he's running the power play. And, I mean, you got an NHL player on your team, you're going to use him, right? At least you're a smart coach, you're going to use him. And so he was running the power play and doing a pretty decent job of it. And I was watching this, the skills, the passing and shot and so on, but thinking, it's going to be a cold day in heck before he's ever running the Edmonton Oilers power play. So take it all with a grain of salt. But, he was doing kind of the Clefbaum thing of, just playing center point, passing left, passing right. But he does actually have a wicked wrist shot. We've seen that in Bakersfield. notably, you'll probably remember this game that the first game that Ken Holland went down to the AHL in the playoffs, where the Condors made this great comeback, tied the game like super late in the third period. Tyler Benson, and then they won it in the first minute of overtime. I think it was 7-6, and it was Wild Bill Lagesson who scored the winning goal on a wicked wrist shot. You know what? He does score goals, and most of them he scores with that shot. He likes to poach a little bit. Like he'll move into the slot, like when the play is somewhere else, and if the other guys aren't minding the store, he'll duck into the high slot. And if he gets the puck there and a half second to do something with it, he can fire a very hard, accurate shot. And that's how he scored two of his three goals so far in that league. It's off that wrist shot. So I think the thing I think that's probably most underrated about this guy is he's got way more offense than is generally credited. I mean, he had good numbers in the AHL his 1 year. Like he had 8 goals, 19 assists his first year there. That was the year that he played with Jones and Bear, and then Bouchard joined him in the playoffs. Now all four of those guys are in the picture for jobs with the Oilers, and he actually scored the most even strength points that year of any of them, but he didn't play at all on the power play, so even strength was all he got. So he's got some offense. He can pass the puck. He doesn't like to rush the puck. He'll lug it out and dump it in, or he'll lug it out and pass it off. But at least not in the games that I saw did he try anything approaching end to end, where drove hard into the offensive zone with it. But very smart in the distribution, and good at when he wins involved in a puck battle where it's sort of a 50-50 puck. He'll get a stick on it and he'll chip it into a good area where a teammate can skate onto it. And he relies on his teammates. He uses his partner well. And for the most part, I thought his positional play was pretty good. And he had a couple times maybe chasing a little bit in the defensive zone, kind of a little reminiscent. You know how Darnell Nurse sometimes will
Yeah,
chase a forward
yeah.
all the way up into the outside the ring net line, and then all of a sudden there was a couple of plays like that. But
He's kind of a
here's a
Darnell Nurse type, isn't he? Like in a lot of ways, like just like not because Nurse lugs the puck more, but other than that,
right.
like kind of that kind of bigger, physical, athletic player who hits. You know,
He's a disruptor, and he
yeah,
he likes to break the cycle as opposed to contain. He's much more an engage, take on the guy, take him on physically, try and strip the puck off of him and get it going the other way. And at that level of hockey, he's been very successful at that. And he's put up pretty good stats in addition to all that ice time. He's scoring points. He's in the top three in the league defenseman for goals and points, and third in the league in ice time. And even on a fairly mediocre team, which I think was 10th out of 14 in the league, plus six. So he's winning his part of the game if you want to look at it in that light. And uh, I, what I want to talk about that guy though is the contract. Wow, I think Holland did a bang up job there, getting him at NHL minimum. Like what I was expecting, frankly, was 1 year, one way deal at 800, 820,000, somewhere in that range, a little below Caleb Jones, um, but and to get a second year and both of them at the NHL minimum. And this doesn't affect the cap, but it just does show the negotiating of Holland. The first year was a two-way deal, which I was almost sure he would get a one-way, but only the second year is one-way. And that's the year that if, they've basically given the guy a little bit at least security going forward, and he knows he's going to get paid. It's not big capital letters paid like some players, but he knows he's going to get an NHL salary for sure for the full season in 21-22, which is hopefully when they're back to playing games. And if he does get picked up by another team like Seattle, well, at least he's going there on a one-way contract with, it's still a pretty reasonable future. Like we haven't seen the ceiling of this guy or anywhere close, obviously.
and the Oilers hedge their bets here. Like they have him for 2 years. So in terms of the expansion draft, let's say Chris Russell gets hurt and doesn't. Well, he's close to already meeting his draft commitment
Right.
for the expansion draft. But there's just one more option now the Oilers have in terms of the expansion draft. They have to make a defenseman available. It could be Russell. It could be Lagesson now if Lagesson plays enough games. So I like that aspect of it
40
too.
games he'll need to play, or the equivalent of 40 games, and however long.
Yeah, and I like them
Let's
as
say half the games of whatever the schedule is. If he does that, he meets that requirement. Which we talked about this, or I wrote a post about this back in July, saying they should sign the guy 2 years, and he could meet that commitment. Well, with the Chris Russell signing, that's now kind of redundant, and makes you wonder if the Russell signing was a little bit ahead of when it needed to be. But on the other hand, Lagesson hasn't played those 40 games yet, and there's no guarantee that he will. Whereas Chris Russell, you know that he's going to meet that qualification handily.
Yes. So I like Lagesson. I think he could be this year a better player than Chris Russell, possibly. Like, I mean, he's because Russell's fading a bit, and Lagesson's in the prime of his career now, and could step up another notch.
Another guy
he's really physical.
Adam Larson.
Yeah. Adam Larson's actually the better comparison than Nurse for Lagesson. That's a better idea because he's kind of like Nurse likes to jump into the play now, or excuse me, Larson likes to jump into the play in the offensive end too. Make a little mad rush at the net now and then. It never pays off. But Lagesson's that kind of wild card in the offensive zone a little bit as well. And they're both big, rugged guys who will hit and are nasty. And that's what I like about Wild Bill. I think he could be a bottom pairing defenseman. I like him as a seventh defenseman. And I wonder if the Oilers will go ahead. There had been talk of bringing in a Madison Bowie. I'm not so sure that's going to happen, that they'll bring in another defenseman now. They seem pretty stocked up they've got a lot of defensemen, and I think they should give Lagesson a chance to play. And I think he can. If there's an injury, Wild Bill can play on your bottom pairing in the NHL and hold his own. That's what I would say. And I don't have any hesitancy about saying that. And I don't think they need to cover themselves with a veteran player. They have a veteran player in Bill Lagesson who's earned his way more than anyone else in the Oilers, paid his dues within the Oilers organization. And it's time for him to get his opportunity.
He's played in 6 different leagues since he was drafted. That includes 8 games in the NHL. Anyway, with the case of Larson, his contract's expiring at the end of next season. And if Lagesson can make a solid impression, he might sort of change the game plan going forward, because he does have some of the similar, the cycle busting physicality. I'm not sure he's quite the mean son of a gun that Adam Larson is, but he's got, he could enter that conversation, and
that could develop. That
present a possible solution of how you're going to replace Adam Larson once his contract expires. Do you have to extend him, or is there another option? And maybe he's that other option. That hopefully in 21, upcoming season, he'll get a decent amount of ice time to show his stuff.
He does play both the left and the right side, as does Caleb Jones. I think as does, if I'm not mistaken, Broberg in Sweden. As do Russell, obviously. Larson, of course, is on the right side, so they would need probably a different solution than Lagesson. But they are, if you want to have that one really rugged defenseman on your team, if you need that guy, that could be Lagesson, and you never know, he could earn that spot. So Bruce, Jesse Puljujarvi, I watched. He had been really strong in his first games in Finland, and then they took a two-week break, and they came back. His team, Carpet and the Oulu Carpet, or Carpet Oulu, I'm not exactly sure which it is, and they were on a bit of a losing streak, and then they came back and they won a game in overtime where Puljujarvi scored the winning goal, and that's the game that I saw. Okay. I'm not going to hold it against them if the whole team was a little bit flat after 2 games off, or 2 weeks off, because of the COVID quarantine they were under. Puljujarvi, like, did you watch? I was a big college basketball fan at one point in the 1980s. I don't follow it anymore, but there was an announcer called Al McGuire, who was an absolutely fantastic former coach of the Marquette Warriors and a fantastic color man. And he had a description for a certain kind of player, the Patrick Ewing, Akeem Olajuwon, Sam Bowie, Ralph Sampson, in that era center, and he called them the aircraft carriers. And Bruce, watching Jesse Puljujarvi, he is the aircraft carrier of the Finnish league right now. He is a total aircraft carrier out there. He's big. Jesse Puljujarvi is big, and he is skilled. And at this level of hockey, Jesse Puljujarvi, if he wants to be a folk hero in Finland, he can just stay over there and play his career in Finland, because he is dominant in that Finnish league. He is so good. He really is, and it's just fun to watch him play. I don't know, like, he wears everyone else on this team has a blue helmet when they're on the road, and he has this gold and yellow helmet, and I don't know what that's like. Is that a thing?
Leading scorer on the team wears a gold helmet.
Okay? That's
team.
what I okay. So he's got the gold
helmet.
Not
allowed to hit him or something. I'm not quite sure what exactly it means at the game level, but the guy with the gold helmet's the top scorer.
So he's very, of course, when I'm watching players, they're always reminding me of players from the past. And so a couple comparisons of this class of player, but I'm going to go with one in the mid-level. He reminded me quite a bit of Vladimir Ruzicka.
Oh.
Rosie,
yeah.
Who had, I think, one really good year with the Oilers, didn't he? And one really good year with Boston. Or was it just with Boston? Did he ever have a good year here? Anyway, he was a big, rangy.
Won the cup here.
Yeah, big, rangy. He didn't play. Big, rangy Czech player who could really move with the puck, could fire the puck, could make plays. Didn't fit on the Oilers because I don't think he ever got along with Messier. That's there's a little bit of reminiscent.
He wasn't a bottom six player, and that's where they're using him. Boston got him into a scoring position, and that's where he succeeded. And he went on to become a pretty famous coach over in Czechia.
He did. So it's that kind of big, and we've seen this kind of European player, this big aircraft carrier. You know, the top of the class would be like Matt Sundin, Alexander Yakushev. You know, just below that we'll have guys like Ivan Halinka and Ruzicka. And hopefully Puljujarvi, I think that's where he might fit in that level. I don't think he's at the very top level of, he's not in the Sundin, Yakushev aircraft carrier class, He's in the next level of aircraft carrier. And but he could do I'm excited to see him in Edmonton. I hope he does well here. And he's just killing it. He on the power play, he's really good. He scored the winning goal in overtime, a power play goal, where he was in the high slot on his off wing and he one-timered it into the net. He's a little bit physical. He's just really strong with the puck. He's moving it well. He's playing with confidence. It's great to see, and hopefully that continues.
I don't know how many times I heard the comment that Puljujarvi should be in the left circle on the Oilers' top power play while he was here, but more than a few times. But he never really got that shot. But
and he won't next year with Nuge there. Like, he's not going to.
Not on the first unit. No, not on the first unit. He might get some few seconds on the second unit. Yeah.
Well, that's all they get, Bruce. Is if you they get the 5-second shift.
And they better be ready to transition from the end of the power play to suddenly facing the other team's best line, as Dave Tippett pointed out in his recent avail.
Well, maybe they have Puljujarvi, Turris, and Ennis, maybe they could get it done in that situation, and with a couple, if they have Bear and Nurse out there with them or something like that, that might work at the end of a power play facing the other team's top unit. So the last player that I watched, Bruce, was Markus Niemelainen, who I haven't seen him play in years. I watched some of his junior games in Canada, and then for the Finnish junior U18 team. So he's a big guy, 6'6", I think, 220 or something like that, 210. Great big guy. He's been playing in Europe recent seasons. And I was curious to see, there was always the hope that he would develop some offensive skill. And with that size, and he's a fairly decent skater, he would develop into an NHLer. And then last year, the Oilers signed him to an entry-level contract, which surprised the heck out of me, because it didn't look like he had ever developed into that player. So I've only seen one game window. And honestly, watching him, I was thinking, why Why did they sign him to an entry-level contract? Because his puck moving, Bruce, like at least the game that I saw, it's not there at an NHL level. It's just not there. And maybe he just had a bad game moving the puck. So let's file it under that. Bad game moving the puck. So I was thinking, is there anything? And yes, there is something there. He's quite a ferocious. He's for a player in the Finnish league right now. He laid out a couple hits, and he was pretty nasty in front of the net. So I'm going to say if Markus Niemelainen, like if you're going to make the NHL, climb that Mount NHL, you have to have a lot of tools, right? You got to have maybe it's the slap shot that gets you to the next level. But to get to the next level, you got to have some other tool, which maybe is like good hockey IQ. And then to get to the final level, like to get closer to the mountaintop, you have to have defensive acumen. So his tool is going to be he's huge reach. So he's very good penalty killer with that huge reach, especially. He's a decent enough skater to play in the NHL. And if he's ever going to have a hope, though, he's going to have to get really mean and even more aggressive than he is now. He's stepped up in that area, and he's going to have to become a really physical hockey player, because that's how I see it. I'm not sure what else is going to. It's really hard to make the NHL, obviously. They all want to do it. They all want to make the NHL money, have the NHL lifestyle. That's what will get him there, if anything, would be that a big guy who can really hit. I don't see this there's not a lot of players like this in the NHL, the defensive defenseman anymore. Just the total defensive defenseman who's not great at moving the puck. How many guys like that have NHL jobs anymore?
Curtis Wilson. There's a few of them kicking around.
Is Justin Hall like that in Toronto? I haven't seen him play. Is he that guy?
I don't know. There's a few of them kicking around, but there's they're becoming rare birds, and they're people. There's just more emphasis on quicker puck movement rather than defending. Spending time in your own end defending, getting the darn puck out of your zone, and getting it up to the forwards. And even defensemen who don't necessarily do a lot in the offensive zone, if they can at least get the puck moving in the right direction, that has value. And if you can't do that, you're in for a long haul to even make it into the NHL.
Alrighty.
He's with the year the Oilers drafted him from Saginaw Spirit, first pick in the third round, he had 1 goal and 26 assists. And he looked like a promising young guy. He looked like a young Martin Marinson, 6'5", 120 pounds. Looked like he was made out of pipe cleaners. And I guess he's filled out some. But since then, he's played 5 seasons, and he had 1 goal in 4 of those seasons. And he's never had more than 6 assists in any of those seasons. I mean, there's just no offense, either in the OHL or in mostly SM League, Finnish league that he's played in. He's defense first and last, it looks like.
Yeah. So again, if I'm completely honest and somewhat uncharitable, I question why they handed him a contract. It doesn't, just on first viewing. But we're going to continue. It's draft and follow or sign and follow, Bruce. We are at the Cult of Hockey. We are on this. We are going to be watching future Markus Niemelainen games and give you updates until we cannot bear it any longer, or he shows us otherwise. He will prove us wrong. He will prove me wrong and show that puck moving ability. But again, if he hits like crazy, he's got a chance. And he is hitting. He looks nasty, so got to give him that. Alrighty. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up for Oilers news. So you're up next, Bruce. I think on Sunday when you post next, I'm going to be posting tonight on these players that I saw, writing much of what I just said here. But you're going to be tackling some of the Swedish league players for Sunday night.
Yep.
And we'll go from there, and we'll probably alternate. I'll do the Swedish players, and then we'll try to watch all of them, and this will culminate with when we're going to come up with new Cult of Hockey prospect rankings, and this will really help us give. I think we'll have a better sense than we've ever had before from watching all these guys, exactly who should be ranked where. I don't know if it would actually change the standings that much, but seeing them play as just opposed to going on stats and what the scouts say, but we'll be able to tell with our own eyes and have our own impressions, of course, and we'll be able to see a lot of games too. We won't just have to rank them on 5 games. We'll be able to see them play 10, 15, 20 games before the NHL season starts. I'm guessing the season's going to start sometime in mid-January would be my bet.
They're still aiming for January 1st, they say. So
is that what
we'll
they're
see.
saying?
Yeah, that was what was said today.
As Brian Burke says, they've got to play, and they do have to play. They will be playing. They've got to play. You can't run a business and like this. People will start to lose interest. They already are. Lots of people have dropped off in terms of interest in the NHL. Like, I mean, like if you're an Oilers fan, there's been 4 games in
8 months.
20 months. How have we been doing these podcasts, Bruce? What have we been doing?
Watching games in Europe.
That's
watching
exactly
watching playoffs without the Oilers in them. We're used to that. So
I couldn't bear to watch much of the playoffs, honestly. Once the Oilers got out, I couldn't watch it. I was just, I don't know. I just lost heart in the playoffs after the Oilers went out. I was just really disappointed and I was about to get, I think I've said, I was about to get interested in the Canucks and they got booted. I was about to get interested in the Islanders and they got booted. So that was it for me. I might have watched 5 minutes of the Stanley Cup final, and I usually watch all of that, but I didn't have any interest.
Well, I mean, Tampa Bay versus Dallas in Edmonton. I mean, what could get more intimate than that, you know? So before we sign out, we were talking about defensive defensemen earlier, and one who just passed away, Jim Nielsen.
The Chief.
The Chief, yeah. First Nations defender, one of the early ones. He played a long NHL career, 1,023 games.
Wow.
From 1962-63, he broke in at age 20 in the fall of 62. That was my first year of watching hockey. And after playing in the NHL for, what would that be, 16 years, he finally finished out the string right here in Edmonton playing for the WHA Oilers in 1978-79.
How many games did he play?
35 games.
I don't even remember that. I have no memory.
I was a season ticket holder at that time, and he was a snail's pace veteran player, you know, with all the smarts in the world. Let the puck do the work, clear the front of the net, and, you know, don't make any mistakes. And he contributed, he played about half of that final WHA season where the Oilers actually finished in first place. He was a plus player, didn't score much, but he was literally playing out the string. But it was fun to watch a guy that had, you know, so much NHL experience. And you could just see the smarts on display, even as the skills had significantly eroded.
I loved the WHA. It was just so chaotic. It was
so,
as the kids say now, it was so random. Like, you know, I remember there would be times when they would trade like 4 or 5 players on one team for 4 or 5 players on the other team. Or there would be times when a team would fold and suddenly you'd get 5 players and the other, you know, you get 5 new players coming in and you know, Gretzky came in like after a backgammon game. So it was just such a random, fantastic league with all these characters. Of course, they didn't wear the helmets back then. And I understand most players didn't. And I understand why they wear them now. Of course, you're going to wear a helmet playing hockey. But it really did add to the color and character of the game when you could so clearly see the players' faces and their big bushy hair, Ken Baird. And yeah, that was a hell of a league. But I do not remember Jim Nielsen. Oh, someone's knocking on my door here. We better go.
All right.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for talking.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast. I have no idea who this is, but I better get it. Maybe it's a home invader. All right. Talk to you later, Bruce.